Welcome to the Unlist. I figured this time around I'll do more of an educational video. It's been a while since I've done one of those. I've been doing mostly opinion pieces and actual Unlist videos where I unroll fragrances for you based on a certain theme. So this video is all about musk, not to be confused with my animalics video. That focused specifically on animalic materials, materials that have an animalic smell. Some musks do have an animalic smell, and I will mention those in passing here, but we are really focusing on the concept of musk itself. Now, if you look in the dictionary, especially if you're an English speaker, you'll find that the dictionary really starts with the deer musk, with Tonkin as it's known. The word musk, as we use it to describe the smell of musk, begins with that material, with the musk deer. So, fragrances being called musky, musk being an adjective rather than a noun, is based off of the discovery and at one point widespread use of that particular material sourced from those animals, which we drove to near extinction. We couldn't find a better source of musk for a long time, so we used that deer musk. That began to change. Now there are other alternatives, as you know. There is civet from the cat, there is the castoreum from the beaver, the hyraceum from the mouse. A handful of plant-derived materials also can have a musky odor, labdanum, costus, among other things. But it wasn't until the advent of modern chemistry at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century that we started seeing the first proper synthetic musks being used that could adequately replace the widespread use of Tonkin. And the other musks, like civet, like castoreum, like hyraceum, they had unpleasant side effects. I will refer you back to that animalics video if you want to learn more about that. But the long and short of it is that those materials had some fecal or pissy or between the legs quality that perfumers sometimes had to try and work around because maybe they weren't trying to make a fragrance with those qualities, but they had to use those materials. So what they would do is they would build up the composition, in many cases, to hide those facets. So you look at a fragrance like Jiki, for instance, and it might smell a little off-putting at first, but once it dries down, it doesn't smell animalic anymore. It just smells spicy and rounded and beautiful. And it's because the perfumer, in this case, was Aim Guerlain, worked very hard at trying to hide those fecal pissy elements. He wanted the civet to just be a booster for the rest of the fragrance. However, once you get into the first synthetic musks, which were known as nitro musks back then, those didn't have any of those negative qualities. They were just the positive qualities. And thus they get called white musks. And they're called white musks because they don't have that yellow or brown connotation to them, okay? They are just the musk and nothing else. They might have slight sweetness depending on the particular material, a slight spicy or ambery odor. Not all white musks are created equal, mind you, but they are a hell of a lot cleaner than their animal or plant counterparts, that's for sure. Now, there were originally 5 of these white musks, 5 of these nitro musks. All but 2 of them are gone now. So 3 of them bit dust. And of the 2 that survive, only 1 can be used freely. The other one is restricted, so it can be used in only small quantities. Originally, these nitro musks were, in no particular order, you had musk ketone, musk xylene, the only 2 still being used. They were also joined with musk ambret, which is gone, musk tibetine, which is gone, and musk moskine, which is also gone. So what happened was the ambret, the tibetine, and the moskine were discovered to cause reproductive harm, to cause other things like bioaccumulation, which would mean if enough people were using them in soaps and shampoos and everything else, eventually it could get into the water supply, get into the wildlife, cause problems, right? So those 3 were sent to the forever box. They are gone. And then the 2 that remained, xylene and ketone, xylene was also found to be problematic, but could be safely used in low quantities. So it was restricted but not banned. And then ketone remains the only of the original 5 nitro musks, the original 5 white musks that can still be readily used in fragrances. Although musk ketone does have a very old-fashioned kind of musk profile that's not particularly favored much by modern perfumers. Usually if you're going to see musk ketone put into a fragrance now, it's someone trying to make more of a Guerlainade sort of feel or a Caron kind of feel. They're going for a certain vintage aesthetic if they're going to use that musk nowadays. We have so many other options, not necessarily better, but just more modern options that have more sheer or abstract feel to them, okay? That stuffy old style musk that's associated with your Guerlain, with your Shalimars, with your other fragrances of that period. People aren't really going to reach for the ketone anymore if they're perfumers working for the modern perfume industry. So maybe in small quantities, but not as a star player anymore. Moving into the 60s, we saw some of the first polycyclic musks that weren't based around the nitro. Okay, they were based around other molecular patterns. Galaxolide was one of them. Galaxolide has a funny story because Galaxolide was originally for commercial use only. It was isolated, I think, by Procter & Gamble. And it was meant for use in laundry detergent. It was meant for use in dish soap. So you saw the Galaxolide turn up in things like Tide and Dawn and Palmolive, okay, any number of shampoos from that era, because it has a very fruity, floral sort of vibe to it. And that fruity, floral vibe doesn't make it the best thing for, you know, a oak moss focused composition or an amber focused composition. And, you know, people weren't super into fruity floral fragrances back in the 60s. I mean, yeah, fragrances had florals in them back then, and they had fruit notes too, but they had a whole lot of other stuff going on. Green notes, they had amber notes, they had patchouli, things that were not really conducive to that kind of, you know, more of that soapy, clean feeling that, you know, well, a box of Tide's going to get you, or a bottle of Dawn detergent, right? However, that would change with one particular fragrance called the Baron, a men's fragrance released by Evian, later on released by LTL when they would buy Evian. But Evian was the original producer of White Shoulders, and the Baron, which originally launched in 1961, was kind of a male retooling of White Shoulders, focused around carnation as the primary subject, to be the carnation that goes in the man's lapel. Well, when Galaxolide hit the market, the perfumers behind the Baron saw its potential, and after only 3 years, they brought the composition back in-house, removed a lot of the sandalwood that was originally the base of the fragrance. They kept some, it wasn't all gone, but they dialed back the sandalwood heavily in that Evian, the Baron, and they replaced a lot of it with the Galaxolide musk, which when you send it back out into the wild, now you've got that fruity floral musk profile that's underneath the carnation note, which is mostly based around eugenol, and it gives you the soapy, clean carnation, which was a little more like the actual flower would be, you know, so made the fragrance more like what it was supposed to be, and thus more popular. A lot of guys loved wearing the Baron back in the day. It was a night out fragrance for a lot of guys. So you can still buy it. It's discontinued, but you can still find it floating around. Check it out if you want to smell the first real noteworthy use of Galaxolide in a commercial fragrance that's not a soap or a shampoo. It's the Baron by Evian, or LTL rather. But you got to have a bottle that's after 64. If you get that deep vintage, 61, 2, or 3, you're not going to get the Galaxolide. You're going to get something else. Now, Ambroxan would effectively replace Musk Ambret, you know, and we would have a handful of other musks over time that would enter the equation that would replace more animal-derived materials. Those of you who are perfumers know that Tonkatone would effectively replace Tonkin musk. So there were a lot of deer musk style fragrances introduced in the late 60s, early 70s Stuff by Alyssa Ashley, stuff by Jovan, stuff by Cody. You know, Jovan Musk for men, etc., etc., etc. They all used Tonka musk to give you that deer musk quality, that fuzzy, woolly, sweet kind of musk profile. A little bit animalic, but not much. And then also it would turn up in things like Chaps by Ralph Lauren. Tonka was used in women's fragrances too, but it ended up being a very strong go-to musk material for the men's stuff in the 70s. We would also see Ambroxide, better known as Ambroxan to the frag bros, right? Gotta get the Ambroxan bombs, yo. Gotta get them compliments, yo. Gotta get that massive pizzazal, whatever. I don't talk like Snoop Dogg. I try, but I can't do it. Look at me. Do you think I'm able to talk like that? No, I'm not. I give it my all, though. Anyhow, carrying on. So the Ambroxide or Ambroxan, Ambroxizzle or whatever in my nizzle, shizzle, something. But the Ambroxan would become like the holy grail of transparent musk materials because it took the thing that gave ambergris. It took the thing that gave ambergris its transparent, fresh quality and divorced it from everything else. So the saltiness, the bad breath, the mineral qualities, gone, 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 all gone. Now, really, Ambroxide crystals, Ambroxan crystals, are derived from clary sage. It's a molecular breakdown of clary sage, but it is similar enough to the molecules in real ambergris, which I think, I'm trying to remember what that particular molecule is called, Ambrian, I think. It's close enough to actual Ambrian molecularly that Ambroxan serves the purpose. Problem is, really expensive. So you didn't see a lot of Ambroxan used in fragrances until the 80s. I mean, it was synthesized back in the 50s, but no one could really afford it. It wasn't until the 80s that Ambroxan began showing up. And it began showing up in a lot of your fresh fragrances, your transparents, your ozonics, the whole fresh fougere thing, the whole fruity floral thing, and then of course aquatics, the big one being cool water, right? Now, the Ambroxan in cool water is what gives it that transparent, uplifting feel, yet at the same time also the tenacity you want. So again, it has that oceanic vibe, but without the saltiness, without the mineralicness, without the bad breath. If you want to create an actual accurate reproduction of ambergris with Ambroxan as your base material, you have to reincorporate the saltiness. You have to like reconstruct those bad elements. You have to reconstruct them and put them back in because they're not going to actually be in the Ambroxan by itself anymore. Which also, there are other versions. There's Cetilox, there's Orchinox. There's a whole bunch of them out there. They're all different brands of that core musk material. And then we get into more modern eras and we see more bespoke, custom white musks and other sort of fatty, gimmicky musks. Halonial was a material that was first used in Angel by Thierry Mugler, and halonial in large doses has a metallic effect, but in light doses, halonial helps create the cotton candy accord that you find in Angel, right? Now it's in a lot of things, but it was first used in Angel, and halonial was another synthetic musk. And then you follow that up with stuff like Helvetolide, which is another synthetic, transparent, clean musk. There's ethylene brassylate, which is another synthetic, clean, transparent, kind of fluffy musk, you know. And then, of course, there is stuff like Cashmeran. Cashmeran bears its name for being very smooth, right? Cashmere wool, and a slight woolly feel at low doses. Cashmeran began to appear in the late 90s. The first men's fragrances I know that have Cashmeran in them is Calvin Klein Contradiction Men from 1999. Then Cashmeran started turning up in other things like Kenneth Cole RSVP. The higher the dose on the Cashmeran, the fuzzier it gets. And Cashmeran can also be a basis for a leather accord. You want more of that nubuck soft suede leather, you can build it up with Cashmeran. And then there's other materials like suede or all stuff too, but the Cashmeran helps you get towards a more clean leather profile, right? Not the tannery stuff like Nitro 10 or English leather, not the heavy, dark, oily stuff like Bellamy or Machino, but more towards that soft, pair of Ugg boots, right? You want that Ugg boots kind of vibe. Well, the Cash brand helps you get there. But it's not a leather material, okay? It's a musk, but it helps you get there. And that's it, guys. There's a whole lot of other ones I can name. There's like a vegetal musk called Muscone, which is out there. Of course, there's just so many other musk materials that I left out of this video. But the big takeaway here is that as we've progressed further and further, the musks have effectively gotten more and more bare, more and more sheer. We've gone from those animal musks to the white musks, from the white musks to the transparent musks, and now from the transparent musks to stuff that's just really out there, right? Almost task-specific, context-specific musk materials, created all the time by the big chem houses, IFF, Givaudan, Firmenich, you name it. So when a perfumer gets really into using synthetics and gets away from just naturals, the amount of musk choices they have, is vast. Okay, the sheer scale and variety of musks, okay, never-ending choices for you. But that's the crash course on musk. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Not a very long video. This has been The Unlist, and I'll see you next time.